All right, guys, this is Steven James with Riot Games, and we are here with Daniel Nelson. That I guess we'd have to say the number one Tokoyami player in the world right now because he's placed the highest at the most meaningful event thus far. So go ahead, man, take the wheel. Tell us a bit about Tokoyami and what you did with him in this event.
Sure. So I love Tokoyami because I think that he's a very offensive and defensive character. Like you can play him in either way depending on the matchup. He has a lot of flexibility just because in his kit, so he gets to pick up a summon Dark Shadow, the action after milling 5 from his discard. And you can do that once per turn on both turns. So if you don't commit him on your turn, you get to become a 9-hander effectively, which is pretty strong. And then he can buff or reduce damage by 1 while he's committed. So he has a lot of damage mitigation and a lot of just general damage buff as well. Um, the best card in his kit that people probably know him for is this Dark Shadow Ruin, which allows his action cards to not count towards progressive. Um, that's just the general strongest attack in the deck, does the most damage, gives him the most value, and so people are typically on the lookout for this. You want to play this really second or later into the string, which gives you the most flexibility because people always want to block this, but if you play it second or third always, then it forces them to make some hard decisions sometimes. Like they won't want to block the attacks early in the string, and then you don't necessarily have to have this in your hand. You can get some free poke by just playing it later into the string. So it just gives you a lot more value to play it later on. This is typically what you want to open with Crone Frog Takedown if you have it. It doesn't count towards progressive, so it's a free attack. And then with Tokoyami, you get an extra enhance where you can ready a card in your staging area, including your character. And that gives you a lot of incidental value with some cards like Heroic Lineage and Irrefutable Force of Nature and Self Assured that have commit effects where if you check a 5 on the Crone Frog Takedown, you can still get some extra value out of it by using Heroic Lineage for damage and then readying it to be active on defense for the next turn. Or sealing something and then readying it, and then sealing something again, nice and hand step. Changing your attack to a low to make it harder to block, and then readying this to draw cards or change one of their attacks to a low. So it's just a strong overall card that allows you to get extra value if you check well on it, and then it's free. So
Not adding to progressive difficulty is amazing. I love to see that
yeah,
card first, and then the card pool. I'm not sure about
yeah,
yourself.
absolutely. Yeah, it's also nice sometimes as a second attack, especially after a giant ice wall, where you can stun 2, and then if you check a 5 on this, and then check a 5 on this, you can just commit your character and then use the enhances on him. It's just basically free because you're gonna commit Tokoyami typically on an offensive turn anyway, because your action commits your character. So anytime that you can commit him to pass a check, like if you play this on a 4 and you just commit Tokoyami and it's just free. So there's just a lot of ways to eke out some incidental value. I'd say that the third best attack in the deck is Ice Storm. This is where most of your defense is generated off of because it has Breaker 2, and it's just a strong mid block, so you can block anything with it. Um, the reason that I run 4 is it's excellent against Kirishima, Jiro decks that want to string out to get value, like play big hardened jab strings or something. And also it's insurance when you go second. When you lose the die roll and you end up going second, you get to hold a lot of times Evil Gaze and Ice Storm, and then you just get to basically free block something because you're giving something -2 speed. You're gonna breaker to them, and you're gonna blow up one of their foundations with Evil Gaze. So it's just a nasty combo, and when you're going second, you get that extra card, you get a free partial mulligan. It's easy to look for, and it just ends a turn.
And that is what we call maximum value.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Frigid Heatwave is an advantage engine in the deck to draw 2 cards. It's also the second biggest damage threat behind Dark Shadow Ruin because you are usually milling 1 or 2 ranged attacks. Sometimes you can hit the jackpot and just get like 6 free damage. Um, but because I play 2 Frigid Heat Waves, there's this pull to play a bunch of ranged attacks, which kind of constrains the deck. Like there's some good non-ranged attacks in fire that I would like to maybe play. Like Corrosion Lunge is great to give Dark Shadow Ruin free speed and damage. But because I'm playing 2 of these, I don't want to brick on it. And so I have to keep most of my attacks ranged attacks. This is the only exception. I'm running 2 signature right swings, and this is just a consistency engine to let you discard non-attacks on your attack turns and draw attacks, or draw more summon dark shadows. Which is really the most important thing when you're stringing out, is that you have as many summon dark shadows as possible in your hands, because they just basically say that you can check your next card. And then I run 1 giant ice wall main. This is a really good card, stun 2, and then if you have a momentum, you can discard it to give your next ranged attack stun 2. So effectively stun 4 with basically any attack that you're playing after it. And it has Breaker 1 on a high block, which is exceptionally strong. It's also a mix-up low attack. This card is... I could push... If I was pushing the attacks up, I would probably play another one of these main board, but I went for a lower attack count with cards like Signature Right Swing for Heat Wave to just draw. Because you have to play a lot of actions in Tokoyami, and so it's a little bit unstable. If you play the normal attack count, you don't get to build as consistently. And one thing that I kept in mind when I was building this deck was consistency. Like 50 cards is my absolute limit, just because anything more makes Tokoyami's ability inherently worse.
So for those that are not in the know, how many attacks exactly are you running?
Yeah, I'm running 17 attacks. The normal would be about 18. Aggressive decks can run more, like 20. But yeah, 17's a little on the light side.
20, I've seen 2021 for, but those are
Hmm.
usually it's like, maybe 60-ish kind of card deck, depending on the, I guess it depends on the character, a lot of it, right? 7 hand size, you're going to see a lot more hands depending, I guess, on the meta. And with this guy, he seems like you want to get out damage as early as possible. So with him, are you aiming for to be ending games really fast, or is this like you kind of go for a longer game?
So yeah, that's a great question. It very much depends. With Kirishima, I'm 100% in there for the long game. Kamui Woods, trying to play a long game, building 10, and then going for a one shot, where I just play like 7 attacks in 1 turn. So I'm like sitting there, just building good foundations, sculpting my hand, getting value, and then just once I have like the best hand I could possibly have, just doing everything in 1 turn. Um, Maybe looking for a little bit of poke against Kirishima sometimes with like an Ice Wall or an Ice Storm, but really not that often. Versus Jiro and 20 healthers, I am going pretty aggressively. Uh, if I have a turn 2 versus a Jiro player, I'm gonna take it because Jiro can make things unblockable. Speed is a big weakness to Tokoyami, and I just don't want players to have the chance to build that up.
So one thing, like, I mean, at the beginning before that we started, you said that like a lot of these top tier matchups, you kind of
Mhm.
approach them with a lot more confident than most people would think that a Tokiyami player would approach them. So here's
Mm.
an oddball question here. If you're fighting against a Mineta who does punish you very heavily for having a larger card pool with some of his support, how are you approaching that matchup? Does your game plan change? Do you want to go tall instead of wide as Tokiyami generally does?
That's a great question. Versus Mineta, no, you can still go for one-shot turns. There's this rule where when you discard multiple cards into your discard pile, you get to choose the order that they're in. So you can use Tokoyami's ability if you already have a Summon Dark Shadow in your discard, and if you check a Summon Dark Shadow, you can say, okay, this is going to be the card at the top. And then if Mineta stuffs your card pool from the discard pile, all he's doing is giving you another Summon Dark Shadow. So it really kind of neuters the effectiveness of sticky balls, and turns it into a pro for you if you're able to put yourself in that type of situation.
So let's take a look. I guess also, sorry, with that evil gaze, you can also start targeting out those
Mhm.
sticky balls. Which was the
Yeah,
foundation?
absolutely.
Yeah, you can target them out and be like, hey, you know what, get that off the board. I mean, there's only two, yes,
Mm.
but long term game, like if you're getting that out early, you can get rid of an something that's targeting you right off the bat. I guess yeah, it does kind of suck that Manetta is always just there and then being annoying, but like ideally, like you're saying, you have a game plan and you can't just not play your game plan just because
Mhm.
this character has an effect. Like, okay, maybe you can force him to play out his effect and then still do your thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, sometimes you might need to pass against a Mineta. Like you might determine like that you're not going to likely check everything you want to do. And in those cases, especially just pivot, build foundations. He's not bad on defense. And Mineta cuts himself for life, which is a very dangerous mechanic against Tokoyami. Um, just because all of his attacks get so big. So whenever you have a player against Tokoyami who's paying life, it's going to be pretty scary to continually activate that effect. So Mineta has a pressure to not use his own effect because of that.
So we got two evil gazes and we got four of his action card. I can't.
Mhm.
I keep forgetting the name of the of it. I'll just throw up evil gaze here really quick, just for those who are maybe still not have not been evil gazed yet. It is that face you see on board. Is like, oh, great. I love playing this Shigaraki as a defensive card. Is very fun. You play. I'm gonna block that, by the way, and then you're gonna lose a bunch of stuff. So that's cool. And then the let's go into your action card. I mean, that is his card.
Yeah. Oh, the last thing about Evil Gaze, I'll say 80% of the time, you use this defensively really early, just to as a tempo play. It's great against Ochako too as well, who's coming up in the meta, because she's a true five-hander. So if she builds two or three, and then you Evil Gaze her first attack, first of all, she doesn't like her attacks being blocked, and then second of all, you're gonna debuild her. So it's just very strong. But sometimes this just gets to be a win the game button, where you can like map it out that if your attack has two more speed, they can't block it, and they're just gonna die. So
You can also
it's always nice to have that.
you can also target coordinate efforts with evil gaze.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why it's there for the most part, is because of the Kirishima matchup, but it does do great in
So
other matchups as well.
so your summon dark shadow. Let's hear it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, this is just the main piece that lets you string out and go super wide as Tokoyami. It gives a +3 to your next check. It commits your character, which is good in Tokoyami because that's how you get damage from him and from his main marquee foundation, Stronger in Darkness, because your character has to be committed. Um, and while it's in your card pool, it gives you +1 speed, +1 damage to all your attacks. And it's not going to be counting to progressive in most cases because Dark Shadow Ruin stops your actions from counting.
So
So it just does everything.
are you wanting to start off your heavy attack lineups with Dark Shadow Rune before going into Dark Shadow Summon, like just so that these
Mm,
action cards are not costing you so much in your strings?
gotcha. No, because so if you just play any attack, like on a 5, then you check a 3, but if this, so this is basically a 4 cost in your deck, you get to ready something, then you play this on a 2, and then Dark Shadow Ruin is going to be on a 4 instead of a 5 because you have a +3 to check. If it's this first, it's on a 3, so you just get to check it for free.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so like this, all you have to do is check this Crone Frog, and then this is guaranteed because this doesn't count towards progressive. It's on a 6 with a +3 to check. I don't run any 2 control checks, so
That would be the
uh
first one in this interview series that that's not running
yeah.
the do check. So let's jump at these foundations. I see one on the table. It's a big old claw. What is that? And what are these? What's the foundation lineup looking like?
Yeah, so on the foundations, this is the most important on offense. Just because it gives everything +1 damage. If you have like 3 of these out, it's disgusting. Everything's going to be coming in for at least 10 damage. With this plus Summon Dark Shadow plus this. Um, Yeah, it also has a combo that you can use where if your character is committed, you can give your opponent's attack +1 damage and then respond with heroic lineage because it gets damaged to give it -3 speed. You can do that with your character as well, but if you do it with this, then you can later give it -1 damage with your character. So if you want to half block something, it can maybe make a difference of 1 damage.
And this would be a
Uh,
classic case in universes, or let's say My Hero, for example, where it's this and not your. So it's meaning any
mhm.
attack.
Yeah, exactly. This is a blank foundation in my deck. Keen observation. I don't use its effect at all. It's just a spam. It costs 0. It has a 2 high block. There's a lot of great high attacks. I only have one way to activate it in my whole main inside, which is a one-off exploding pride. And I've never done it before. I just use it just so that I can build 5 or 6 foundations turn 1 as consistently as possible.
Hmm.
And same with this spam. It's a great check. Um, it's good against All Mights, giving punches -speed. It's a great block, and it's a good spam in general. So
So just as you're going through the foundations, if you can just throw up the name there for anyone that's unaware.
yeah, I'm sorry. Arrogant disposition.
There you go.
Yeah.
Arrogant disposition. Yeah, this is a very popular card I've noticed in just in the air decks, and also in the fire decks. Um, so this you said this is a blank card inside your deck. Could you explain why?
The keen observation.
Oh no, no, sorry.
Yeah.
Arrogant disposition. That
Oh
is also a blank card in your deck
no, no, it's not. This is I
for
mean,
the
this is
punches. Yeah.
useful. Yeah. Also the 6 check is really nice. I mean, there's lots of situations where you get into a state where you need to check a 6 to win, either on defense or offense, and this just gives you some hope of doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, that's a that's a reason why Tokoyami on Fire is nice
Mm-hmm.
compared to Tokoyami on Chaos because Chaos has no 6 checks.
Yikes.
Uh, yeah, no 6 checks, no hope. I mean, the chances might be slim, but those few percent over hundreds of games really add up.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Yeah, exactly. This is just the best defensive, offensive foundation in the deck, Heroic Lineage. You can respond to commit after your attack, get speed, give it +2 damage, which it gets when it comes in if there's one of these in the card pool. Or if you play another one in the card pool. And then after your rival's attack gets damage, you can commit it to give it -3 speed. So it just has such versatility that it is crazy good. You would never play less than 4 of these in a fire deck, in my opinion.
Yep, I have had the great quote pleasure of fighting against a local Ida who just loves this card, and it's always on the table. Like, can we
Mm.
not with this guy?
Yeah, it's even better in Tokoyami just because you can use it on offense for free with Crow and Frog, and then ready it and use it for the speed reduction on defense like the next turn. There's just so much value that you can get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But I pretty much never use this on offense unless I'm going for a kill that turn. Just because it is your best foundation on defense, and without it, you feel kind of naked. Uh, you don't have much other speed mitigation that's just generic in this deck. So if you don't have this, your opponent knows that they can probably throw everything at you, and you're not going to be able to stop all of it. And you're pretty fragile at 20 life, so
Mm-hmm. So next one we have is Screaming Child.
yeah. In the enhanced step, just a crazy strong ability. Great versus Jiro, great versus the mirror, great versus Asui. It's like Sticky Balls light versus Asui because if you use it on the second attack and she chooses for some reason not to kick out the first attack as her first enhance, then you're gonna be leaving an extra card in your card pool the whole time, adding towards progressive.
I like this card a
Uh,
lot. This is
Yeah.
Super duper good. And it's I guess you used it a lot against Kirishima as well to kind of like, okay, you're gonna get to do one thing, one of those two things you like doing, you're gonna do one of them, or in some cases one of three things. When with a lot of his different punch cards and all the different little effects it has, is only they only get one, right?
Yeah, for sure. I leave this card in versus Good and Earth Kirishimas. I take it out versus Void Kirishima just because I feel as though Void Kirishima doesn't mind too much losing the enhance as much as the Earth and Good Kirishimas do. And I'd just rather have something that's a little bit more targeted. But
Mm-hmm.
it had such a wide range of uses. Like it's hard. There's 100 different scenarios where it's good. That it's tough to not want to run at least two.
This solid card.
Yep. Then Irrefutable Force of Nature. I mean, this is for coordinated effort. There's not much else to say. It's useful for other things. I will use this against Stun Hate on Earth. It can't be fixed. Is a card that I will sometimes seal just so that they have one less foundation during the turn that I'm trying to kill them, because that one less foundation can make a big incremental difference in whether they can block something or not.
And it says you can also remove to get rid of an asset.
Hmm.
So if you're finding yourself, or commit right as well. But
Hmm.
there's not many fire assets, I don't think. But you can at least remove it to maybe if you're getting earphone jacked to death. You can also end that as well, right?
That's true, but I typically enjoy being milled, even though I'm a very thin deck at just 50. I get so much benefit from having ranged attacks in my discard that I'm pretty happy if my opponent is trying to mill me out for some reason. It gives me a lot of value incrementally. I have used the remove to seal Night Watch on turns where I'm going for a kill
Mm-hmm.
against Void Kirishima or Eraserhead. Because Night Watch isn't Earth, Fire, or Water, but you can just remove this and then say, okay, I'm gonna get all my enhances off anyways.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely.
yeah,
So you got two of those.
yeah, too.
What's the next one we got coming up here?
So the next two of is Latent Skill. This is a consistency piece. Flip, discard 2 to draw 2. It does the exact same thing as Signature Right Swing, but it has a 2 high block instead of a 1 low block, and it's a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
So I went for a 2-2 split on those because I wanted to lower my attack count. I initially had 3 Signature Right Swing and 1 Latent Skill, and I swapped it out for 2 Latent Skill, 1 Signature or 2 Signature Right Swing. Um, just because I thought a higher foundation count would give a bit more stability.
In the case of fighting against Shoto, I guess, I mean, obviously this
Mhm.
card doesn't exist against Shoto, correct? Because you lose the two cards and he just blanks it out.
I mean, if so, I have heard that, but really, if a Tokoyami is activating this against Todoroki, it's not like they're not reading the card. Like they know that he has the potential to cancel this,
Mm-hmm.
and if he cancels this, he should probably be prepared to die. Because I don't think anyone is just doing this and hoping that Todoroki forgets that there's an enhance on his face,
Mm.
or response rather.
Okay.
Uh, but most of the time, I would expect this to be bait. And
Ah.
it could still be good for the Todoroki to cancel it because they might just be trying to level them into not canceling it
Mm-hmm.
and drawing more attacks.
So I mean,
But
I
it,
guess in some cases you can get rid of a two like just foundations that you didn't want in your hand in the first place, or
yeah,
maybe in some cases two attacks that you want to be in your discard pile so that your ice storm goes off better, right?
yeah, frigid heat wave, yes,
Sorry, Frigid Heat Wave. Ice
yeah,
Storm.
yeah.
What is Ice Storm
Ice
again?
Storm is the breaker block that has powerful 3
Okay,
and
yeah, yeah.
can't be
Sorry,
blocked
sorry,
by
yeah.
attacks.
Frigid. Sorry.
Yeah.
Def-
Yeah, they all look pretty similar. Uh,
Does it though? But sorry, and then the next foundation you got here.
yeah. So I said heroic lineage is the best foundation in the deck, but this is pretty close to commit change to the zone of an attack, destroy, draw 1 card for every 4 ranged attacks in your discard pile. There are a lot of times where you need 1 more attack or 1 more summon dark shadow or something, and this card just lets you draw it. Or you're playing against Kirishima, they pick up a high block, and you just change your attack to a low.
Mm-hmm.
Or on defense, they're throwing an attack that you can only half block, and if you half block it, you die, and you just change it to a mid. So it's just incredibly versatile. It's great against Nomu
Yeah,
because
F that character.
yeah, Nomu is the hardest matchup for this deck. Because you have to play defense absolutely perfectly. She can incorporate the kicks, which are really difficult for Tokoyami to block. So this combined with plus ultra out of the sideboard versus that package lets you block things much more easily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess
Uh,
having more breakers there as well, changing the zones of
mhm.
these attacks is great. Oh, this doesn't have breaker, but I'm just thinking about the cards that
Ice
you do have.
Storm or
Yeah, and you know what,
yeah.
having those stuns against offensively, anyways, um, against Anomu is, I guess, another part of the package here because he's gonna bring things to printed. But I mean, that's cool. But if you don't have any cards anymore because I committed them all out, I mean, are you really able to bring me to printed?
Yeah, this is so this doesn't
I'm just talking about your attack package. Sorry.
oh, attack package, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and a final use of this is to overload one attack zone. Like if you have an ice wall or an ice storm that you want to start off with attacking and it's a low, but you're worried that they kept a spread of blocks in hand, like they kept a high and a low,
Mm-hmm.
maybe 2 or 3 highs because you play a lot of highs. You can change your low attack to a high, um, in order to exhaust all the blocks of that particular zone,
Mm-hmm.
so that by the end of your string, you're still playing stuff very easily, but they've run out of cards to block it with.
So in that case, I guess your their block numbers for in their discard pile is going to be playing a big a part in your game plan, right? How many highs have they played? How many lows have they played or blocked with? Let's say or checked. So you get a good read on their number spread as well. Is that correct?
That is certainly the optimal way to play it. I didn't really slow down webcam to ask people to check their discard a lot.
Yeah.
Uh, Especially versus decks that I would want to do that against the most,
Mm-hmm.
like no moves and things. Um,
It always sucks to say how many. They like, what are you looking for? Like, I don't want you to know
yeah,
what I'm looking for. I just want to look without those questions. So you got two more cards in there. I think is that two more cards or in your
I have
hands?
three.
Three in your mittens. All right, let's see it.
Yeah, so three one-ups. Calling for backup. This is just a consistency card. Lets you draw an extra card. Maybe turn yourself into a 10-hander.
Mm-hmm.
With Frigid Heat Wave, a 12-hander. Like I've held 12 cards in my hand before, and it just feels really good. Uh, so I like having one of these just to fill the deck out.
You never know when you
Give you
need a card.
yeah. Cool student. I underappreciated this card until a lot of my testing leading up until the event. I only wanted one because it is bad to have multiples, but it has a good block. It has a 2 high block, and it's especially great with plus ultra because it's one of the only things that can affect your plus ultra check. Because you can discard a momentum to give +2 to your next check to play card, including a block. And so if you check a 3 on a plus ultra, uh, then it's like you checked a 5, right? So whereas speed reduction doesn't matter if you're blocking with plus ultra, this does.
Do you play
Also,
plus
you
ultra
can
in your
give.
deck? Sorry.
I play 2 in the side, and I
Two in the
bring it
side.
in
Got it.
for
Got it.
yeah,
Yeah. That's the sideboard. Okay, got it. Because it's like plus ultra. What?
yeah. I mean, it's good in general. You can also give +2 to your check, and then let's say that you're playing something that would be on a 7. You can also add it to the top of your deck just to know for sure that you're gonna check a 7. So it
Absolutely.
gives you a lot. It just makes math easier.
And
Uh,
we love cheap numbers.
yeah.
And then last one.
Nervous. Yeah, nervous habit. This is great. You can lose the health and give an attack +1 speed. Um, or you can destroy it after it's committed to an opponent's card effect to make them destroy a card. But you're mostly using it on offense. Losing 1 health might seem like a pretty steep cost in Tokoyami, but typically you're doing it on a turn where your opponent is dying. So if they die, you don't really have to worry about your life total. You're just giving everything +1 speed, and then over the course of 5 attacks, +5 speed might make the difference between blocking, like, 1 more attack, which could let you kill them in a case where you couldn't otherwise. You don't really want multiple though, so that's why I only have 1. It's a great card though.
I mean, it's great stun hate too. It's like a very aggressive
Mm.
stun hate too. If you commit him this card, that's fine. You now lose a card.
Yeah, it's best against decks like Dinky who are gonna stun on their first attack when they don't have any committed foundations, or versus Uraraka 2 who have a lot of stun attacks as well, and they only play a few foundations.
Hmm.
Um, versus decks that have stun attacks later into the chain, like maybe Ida or something, or like Eraserhead, it's not as strong. You probably don't want to activate it because they'll just pop a committed foundation, and they'll say, okay, if you survive on your next turn, you're gonna have 1 less foundation.
Hmm. Absolutely. So let's get into a bit of that sideboard here. Oh, let's get into the sideboard. So we know we got plus ultra. Let's throw that one out there right away. We know what that does.
Yeah. Um, I have only used it offensively a couple times, but it just lets you block 1 extra thing, basically, on a attack turn from your opponent, which can really mess up their math, especially if they have this like massive attack and you turn it into a mid with self-assured at the end of their enhanced chain. They planned on it going through or exhausting all of your resources, and then you commit nothing with plus ultra, just like super strong.
And that with was it cool student is how you get the
Mm,
+2 on the check, right?
yeah, absolutely. I bring this in versus Jiro when I'm going first. First is decks that play the kick package versus Nomu, who play the Nomu, both the kicks version and the version that plays Relentless Barrage, just because they're playing so many mid attacks that it's just good for that without anything extra.
Mm-hmm.
And versus Earth decks in general too, it's pretty good because a lot of Earth attacks, like the Naval Laser Beam and things are mid, and they can make them pretty fast, but it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
For the other actions, we have two capture evildoers. I only had 1 of these at first but then I played versus an All Might 2, and I was like, yeah, I need two. That deck is very scary, and especially with momentum, it's terrifying.
Oh
It's
boy.
also good versus Uraraka, Dinky, Ida, just a lot of decks that are solid, like A or B tier decks that you want something for, but you don't necessarily want to main deck any answers for them.
Hmm. Just reading through the
And
enhances on it. That's I've not seen anybody use this card.
oh yeah, I mean, All Might 2 mains 4 of them because he gets to draw 1 or 2 cards for every momentum that he has. And so, when this card says remove 1 rival momentum, they don't get to draw 2 cards anymore. That's pretty great. Uh, the form is also useful sometimes because you can remove your attacks which are counting towards progressive, and then leave this in the card pool. And because you played Dark Shadow Ruin, this isn't going to count towards progressive. But that's more situational. I mostly use it as a hate card rather than an offensive tool.
Mm-hmm.
Final Action is another evil case. This is just for going second against decks that I want to slow down in tempo, like Jiro, Uraraka 2, Kirishima. Going second, you're going to be playing a grindier game whether you like it or not. And Evil Gaze being able to take out their best foundation while you're blocking something more easily is invaluable. Exploding Pride is another card that I bring in versus momentum decks, like Uraraka. I will probably up this to 2 in the future. I think that I might remove the third Evil Gaze now that Kirishima has been nerfed, because this was mostly for him, and I don't think that I need it as much as I need better high blocks in some matchups as well as momentum hate. No one ever wants to block this card because if they block it, they lose all their momentum, And in a lot of decks that play Reciprocal Burst or recycle their attacks, their momentum is their win condition. So they're never going to want to give up their win condition just to block an attack. So you get to hit them for like 8 damage for free and burn them for more.
Uh,
So just super good.
Momentum hate is always super, super, super good. With that, with the Bakugo card there, I love it. I mean, I've had it used on me enough times where I'm like, God damn it.
Yeah, some people asked me if I would main this card, and I think that if there weren't so many decks that post an issue to Tokoyami, like Asui, that just don't use their momentum pretty much at all, I would be more willing. Of course, it has a high block that's pretty decent, but that's still blocking with attacks is not really where I want to be against aggressive matchups. I'll do it as a last resort, but that's not what I want to be looking to do when I'm thinking about sideboarding or mainboarding something for a matchup. The other attacks that I play are more copies of Ice Wall. This card is just a beating versus Kirishima, Nomu. Uh, it's pretty decent versus aggressive decks as well that you want to one shot, like Denki and Asui, because you side this in at the and then play it at the beginning of a chain and stun 2 of their foundations, and they're gonna have a lot more difficult of a time blocking you. Yeah, it also has pretty solid base damage, and it's a low attack. So when they see that you're playing mostly high attacks, in the game one, and then you side in 2 low attacks and side out 2 high attacks, or side in 2 low attacks and take out 1 high attack, 1 foundation, something like that. It makes their blocking a lot harder.
Yeah, I mean,
And
you're using it more
yeah,
defensively for with your blockers, correct? For your breakers, sorry.
with Breaker.
Yeah.
Yes, it's so good against Asui because you can block and then breaker them if they're attacking too early. Like
Hmm.
if they didn't play enough foundations before attacking. Uh, or you can turn around and kill them with it if they didn't go as all out as an Asui can.
Hmm. And then the last
So
one, it looks like it's a force of one with nature, correct?
yeah, 2 more irrefutable force of
Also, irrefutable
natures.
force of nature. I got so many different cards in my mind.
Yeah, I heard force of nature. Uh, that was just for Kirishima. I think that so I have 4 between the main and side.
Mm.
I'll probably take this down to 2 or 3 now
Yeah.
that coordinated effort is banned.
Thank goodness for that. So I want to say, definitely this has been very illuminating. There's a lot for me to reflect on in terms of Tokiyami and where he sits in this game's meta and more of the long term. Because now that Kirishima has been effectively, I guess, nerfed to a certain degree, we are seeing maybe a very different level or different kind of um, meta, right? Where some characters that just
Mm,
maybe struggled against him before, he's not really. He still exists, but he's not there like he was before. So
right.
they get the shine. How do you now? I'm just gonna keep. I throw this in every interview so far, but like against a character like Ida, how do you feel about Ida?
Yeah, so I think that versus Ida,
Hmm.
at first when I was first working on this deck and testing versus my locals buddy Clinton Thomas, he was playing a lot of Ida at the beginning of the format, and I had a very big issue. Ever since I put in Evil Gazes and I focused on holding Ice Storm, going second, I haven't had as much of a problem, and I think it's because Ida relies a lot on tempo and getting momentum,
Hmm.
and if you stop his early attacks, then you're really he's really not going to put any pressure on you for like 3 or 4 turns. So I feel like Ida in particular has a problem out tempoing Tokoyami, and Tokoyami eventually can get to the point where he can just throw 5 attacks at him, and if a few of them get through, it's gonna be pretty bad, if not death, for Ida.
Hmm. So last question, kind of a surprise question. We got Tokiyami 2. So tell me, what are your feelings about this character? Do you just want his foundation to cake out that one that's just there to be there in your deck? Uh, or is it
Mm.
like just a look at potentially a more improved version of the Tokoyami that you got? Or are you sticking with your day one?
So I am gonna stick with my day one. I think that the Tokoyami 2 will not be very powerful right off of the gate because it relies so much on ally foundations and there are
Mm-hmm.
just so few of them.
Mm-hmm.
So he's losing out on a lot of value just based on what's printed on the character. I do think he has the potential to improve if they print good ally foundations on his symbol.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
He's playing different too. He's Air Void,
right,
Evil, where you built a
right.
fire deck. This is a different deck entirely.
Yeah, I think that fire is Tokoyami's strongest symbol, so it's kind of sad to see him not on fire.
Mm-hmm.
The foundation is decent. I wish it had ally. I don't know why it doesn't have ally, but I'm more excited about Dobby's foundation, honestly, to help you mill and to play your first attack
Mm-hmm.
cheaper.
Okay, so and I think the last thing we'll leave off here is if you could ask Jasko for one thing that you want to see coming for your boy here. It sounds like ally cards, but what would that be? Like, what does the bird boy need to just really skyrocket him above and beyond the other strong, super strongy Jiros out there?
Mm.
What's some one thing you would like to see for this character in the future?
Yeah, if fire had a speed or damage reset, I think that this character would be disgusting. So I don't really want them to print that, but if they do ever print a speed or damage reset on fire, then Tokoyami is going to be gross because his main defensive weakness will be completely fixed, and his offense is crazy.
Mm-hmm. All right, well, Daniel, thank you so much for showing us your Tokiyami deck here today. I think a lot of people out there who are like kind of had the eye on this character or were struggling, maybe trying to put together a strong deck for him, are going to be able to take a look at this character here and this deck profile here and be like, hey, you know what? I see the light, and you can kind of lead the charge for them. So I'll leave you with the last bit. If you do, you have, is there any shout outs that you want to give? Anything, maybe your local meta, et cetera, et cetera. What is any kind of shout out you want to throw out there at the end, just before we let you go?
Yeah, shout out to my locals testing team, Will Bryant, Clinton Thomas, Joseph Atchison played some games with Kirishima against me that helped me develop my anti-Kirishima package. Justin Birch, Genesis Angel, they all play really, really well, and they play diverse meta decks. So it's just been a lot easier to practice when you have an active local community that is dedicated to finding really good cards. And the store, Sean at Sanctuary uh, Books and Games, is amazingly supportive. It's one of the best shops I've ever played at.
All right, thank you so much, and Daniel. Hopefully, we see a lot more of this Tokiyama action in on the 12th, because that's the next big event that is coming up for the provisional challenges, and I'm looking forward to seeing how well you do with this deck. So with that said, I'll say thank you so much, and everyone else, take care.